All right, we are working on wiring, and this is Bob's version of wiring. So we got our map lights in. We found some bulbs on the shelf, which was good. We tested them and they work, and you twist the housing to turn them off and on. So that's all good. So we put them in, put some leads here, and we pick up power off the amp meter to this one, and then we ran a wire over to this one, even though the diagram only shows one map light. And then we just now ran a second wire from our amp meter down to our positive, or hot, let's call it that. It's going to be the negative really, but the hot side of these two test terminals. And the other side, I was going to start running ground wires to that. We've got to run a wire over here for these two dash lights, and then we need a wire up here for this dash light. And in theory, this dash light here plugs into the gauge, and it should be grounded through the gauge. We'll have to see that. And then we also have to run wires to these map light mounting screws, and then we need two more dash lights over on this side. And that's all well and good, but I can't for the life of me see anywhere in the wiring diagram that shows where this lug is grounded to the rest of the car. I have two different wiring diagrams and both of them have 3 wires coming off of this lug, and one of the wires goes to the map light, one of the wires goes to the dash lights for the tach, and one of the wires goes to the dash lights for the speedo, and that is it. There's no indication as to where this lug picks up its ground, and I suppose that common sense would say that you've got to run a wire from here to the chassis someplace to pick up the ground, but why don't they show that in the in the diagram? I don't quite understand that. This is obviously, it'd be grounded to the metal dash piece, but that's mounted to a hunk of wood, so you can again, you can't get a circuit through the wood, so a little confusing. We'll figure it out. We kind of know how things have to go to work, but just a little confusing. And you know, at the end of the day, we'll tidy this up. There's a lot of ground wires, so there's 2, 3, 5 at least ground wires there. And maybe we ought to make up a separate little harness for them and try to bring them all into, I don't know if we can bring them all into one lead here. That's probably asking a bit much, but we might be able to. We'll give it a shot. What we decided to do, we put 3 wires into this terminal here, which will be the ground. And one of them is this number 10 wire, and we're going to run that. We left it long. We're going to ground that to the chassis somewhere, so hopefully that'll ground the dash panel. Then we ran a wire over to that map light and a wire to that map light. And then what we're going to do as far as grounds is pick up this other screw up here, use it like a terminal, and we'll run a wire to that dash light and to these dash lights here. It will do the same thing over here. We'll run a wire here over to those lights for grounds, and hopefully that'll give us all of our grounds. I ordered some little sort of universal light sockets, and we'll have to build. I mean, I can try to resurrect these things. Might put them in some vinegar or something and see if we can clean them up and see if we can use them. But I'd prefer to use something a little more modern, but we'll see what we can do, and we'll continue on. I've got a fog light switch here that I really don't have a fog light for, and I think this switch is for the dash light, so we've got to come power in here and then power out to the dash light, so we'll have that same sort of run of wires to power all the dash lights. This one is a feed, so that would be one of them. We'll get there. I mean, there's not a lot of wiring on the back of this dash. Mostly it's just lights, and then of course you have your harness. You got to feed your ignition switch and light switch and that sort of thing. But and the other one, but we were waiting on some stuff to come in. We bought these little pigtails that take a little mini bulb, so we got a bag full of those, and I think what I'm going to try to do, this is an original piece that was fastened, soldered, somehow bonded to the back of the dash above the oil pressure gauge, and it had a socket in it with a screw-in bulb. And I think what we can do is push one of these rubber sockets with a little mini bulb into that round sleeve and use that. Now, one of the things that the little is made to sort of poke into a hole, and of course the hole it's made to poke into is smaller than the opening on this band, and the little flange here is bigger than the opening on the band. So what I did on this one, just to try it, was to sand the OD of that socket, and then just enough so it sticks in there. Now, I don't know, I'll have to think about that, see how good that is, but at the end of the day, that gives us a nice little modern light in the original housing, and we can bond that back to the dash, and Bob's your uncle. And we just have to wire them in. They each have, instead of the socket being grounded, there's two leads, a positive and a negative, and we can do that for these pieces that we've got soaking in vinegar to clean them up a little bit. And they go over here for the tachometer, one on either side. And then our speedometer had this, and I'm assuming this is some kind of a homemade piece, had it straddling the back of the speedometer, and had a socket at either end. Now we could make a new, this is just a lump of sheet metal, we could make a new one of them with the right size hole in it. But I think that these little modern sockets are going to work pretty good. The other thing that we had, that we tried, this is actually a side marker light socket for a Ford. It's a little bit more substantial and has a little bit different sort of lug on it to poke through, but I think it's a little too much for what for the back of the dash, let's put it that way. These little small sockets are going to be just about right. And I don't know, I just had a thought here about just making a little cover for the end of this, and then tacking it in place and drilling a smaller hole in it, so that this light would then just sit right in the end of the light like that. That might be a bit much because there's not a lot there. Now, barring all of that, I'm going to have to see about just making. Be nice to use these original bits, although nobody's ever going to see them. I could just make here a little angle bracket that came out and came up and came over, had a hole in it, and the light poked in it, and off you go. So anyway, we'll continue to work on these and see what the best way to mount these little dash lights in place is. So we've got one on either side of the tachometer, one for the oil pressure gauge. The amp meter already has its own gypsy light, although I might pop that out of there and see if we can replace it with one of these others, and then we'd have two over there for the speedometer. So we'll get the design and engineering team on that. Working on our little science experiment here, we made a little bracket. I'll turn that off. We just made a little metal bracket, nothing fancy. Punched a hole in it. Got our little dash light poked in there, and we've got a Rube Goldberg set up here, but I've got some wires connected to it. So if we tattoo it right there where the original one was, we can turn it on, and we see that it works. Tilt this up. I don't know if you can see it on the camera or not, but why don't we bump the camera a little bit? We've got a green light showing through here, through that panel on the back side of the tachometer. So I think that that's the best way to do that. It's a lot of extra work to make these little brackets. I mean, it is and it isn't, but it's going to be a lot tidier setup than trying to use the old ones and trying to get those rubber sockets to fit down in there. It's not even doing it this way. Those sockets, when you punch a hole in the material big enough for the rubber to go through, well, the light's not tight. And if I just punch the hole in there so that it fits tight, it doesn't want to fit through there. So, you know, those being loose in there is not good. I'll have to keep playing with that a little bit, see if I can figure out how to get the best of talk much. I'll have to see if I can get the best of both worlds, so I can get it through the hole and still have it tight on there. Not quite sure. Maybe if I had a little bit thicker material, I think that's probably the key. Maybe I can put something on there to thicken that up, so that I think it's not so much the size of the hole as the fact that the material's so thin there that the light's not sort of grabbing it. Really needs to be snug there, so I'll work on that a little bit. Keep working on this wiring on the dash, and it occurred to me that we're making a mess. Didn't seem like that at first, but you know, the guy's got to come along and work on this later. Might look at this and go, what the heck's going on here? You know, we made all of the ground wires blue, so that's not too much of a problem. But all of the other wires, the power wires, we've made red, and we got red wires going every which way. So, you know, the poor guy's got to come along later and try to figure this out. They're going to go, okay, this wire, where does it go? What's it do? So what I decided to do is put these markers on the red wires. Here's a purple one. So the red with the purple is going to be all dash lights. We've got red with black is going to be the two map lights. And I've got a red and green that's going to go to the low fuel warning light, and so on and so forth. So at least at some point, you know, a guy might be able to figure this out. Our other project, the Pinto, is kind of that way. I mean, you look up under the dash and there's just wires going every which way, and they're all the same color. So hopefully this will help. We'll do a legend and keep it with the car, so later on we can try to figure out what we're doing. One of the things that I'm working on are these little warning lights. This little red one, was the I don't know, ignition on, not charging light, whatever you want to call it. And it's kind of, I don't know, I don't think this is an original one. It's kind of hokey. It's got a stem in the back, and then it's got these three little lugs. It's got a stem in the back, and then it's got these three little lugs to ground. And it's going to be kind of a pain in the ass to use. Then I have this nice warning lamp that's obviously not authentic, but really fits in the holes and does a nice job. And I had this one over there for the low fuel, and I can't for the life of me find another one. This one's made by a company called Merit. It's got a bulb inside. Imagine that. Everything I look at now is LED, and unfortunately, because this is a positive ground system, LEDs don't work. So I'm going to try to dig up a couple more of these. I found a place in Malaysia. They're not expensive, but I don't know. Maybe if I order half a dozen of them or something, they'll send them to me. They come red, blue, pink, purple. I'd like to get them so they're both the same. We got a big giant hole in the dash here, and I'd rather not have to fill it in with sheet metal. The first light that I showed you, this one, we got no real way to hold it in there. It looks like it's got a couple of grooves in there, so it had some kind of a spring clip that held it in. But these other ones have their 19 millimeter, I think somewhere around there, 22 millimeter lamp. Got a bulb inside, and they got a nut on the back, so we can put them in and they'll work pretty good. So I've got to work on doing that, and we'll just keep going here and try not to make a bigger mess. Well, we're definitely making a mess. I spent, I don't want to tell you how much time I spent just on these two lights for the tachometer. Two brackets, fit the bulbs in, make a little harness, and you wouldn't want to see that on video because I probably had to do it half a dozen times. All the mistakes are laying on the floor. Probably not going to make my life's fortune wiring dashboards, but I think, I don't know if we're going to be able to show this or not. We got light in there, probably hard to see, but we got green tinted lights on both sides of the tachometer. So that's an accomplishment. I've just got it wired up to this battery right now, but you know, that's at least something after a couple of days of monkeying around. And what I'm going to have to do, I was trying to figure out how to essentially make a harness for the dash lights, and yeah, it's not going to be so easy. I still have this light here that I have to run a hot to, and I have this light over here that I have to run a hot to, and I have to run those two over there. So what I'm going to do is end up with three different circuits essentially, but unless I can go and find some connectors where I can put multiple wires together, I've got one. I've got a style here, you know, like this, but I don't like that because It's not insulated here, so I don't want to hook up all the hots to that, even though the dash is wood. But I'd really rather not have 3 different power feed wires coming off that dash light switch. It would be nice to just have one running to a common divider, and then the lights go off to there. Now the grounds, I've been able to do that reasonably well, but you know, it's a different story because I've been able to use the map lights as sort of a connector, so I feed in here and out here, and that's helped me. And I don't have that type of connector with the hot side, so we'll get it all wired here and see if we can tidy it up a little bit and make it look a little better.